Hello out there, everyone. Looks like we've got over 60 students with us today. That's great. Um, some of the names I recognize, and you'll know me. The ones that don't, my name is Mr. Fugatte, and it's very nice to have this opportunity to do an online lesson with you today. Today's topic, if you are not already aware, is do not bring out your queen too early. Why not? And what to do if your opponent does. It can be a scary thing. Um, a couple of things that we have to go over before we can get to the actual queen coming out is some basic review stuff. So I'm going to take just a second here to go over relative piece value, or at least just piece value as we know it. Everyone should be on this very odd looking screen. This is just showing the different pieces that are on the chessboard. And they each have a point value. Most of you already know them, but for the ones that don't, I'm just going to go over them very quickly. A pawn is the worst piece. It is worth 1 pawn or 1 point. In chess, we know that other pieces are better, like the bishop. They move differently. It's just a better piece. A bishop is worth about 3 pawns. A knight, also worth 3 pawns. So a knight and a bishop can be evenly traded because they're worth about the same amount of points. The rook is better than both the bishop or knight and is worth 5 points. The queen, as we all know, is the super best piece of them all. She is worth 9 points because she is worth a rook and a bishop as she moves just like a rook and a bishop put together. 5 plus 3 is 8, and the queen is worth 9 because she does it in 1. The king has no value. He has a value of 0 or infinity. He cannot be traded. So he has a value of 0. If there's any questions about this, let us know at the end or during the middle break part, but most of you should already know this. Now we're going to move on to tempo. What is a tempo? Well, this is really the heart of why we don't bring our queen out too early is tempo, is because the queen is super valuable. So a tempo, simply put, is just a move. In chess, we take turns moving. White moves, black moves, we take turns. So I'm going to give a brief example here. This is an extreme example, but it is going to illustrate movement. Not all moves are equal. Now we know this is a good move. Most of you remember from Attack the Center lesson. And then black moves out their knight to f6. Many of you saw this in another lesson. White is going to bring out their knight to the middle and guard the pawn. Black is going to retreat and move their knight back. And this is kind of a silly move, but this is going to help to illustrate the point of what a tempo is. White moves their pawn to the center again. Black moves out their knight again. Haha, the knight is back. White moves out their knight. And black, scared, retreats. And as we can see here, as white brings out a piece, and black brings out a piece, white brings out a piece, and then black retreats the piece. What we can see is an extreme example of tempo. It looks as if black hasn't moved, but we know that's not true. We can see that black has moved the exact same number of times that white has. But because black's moves were the same piece over and over and back to the starting squares, black hasn't actually made any progress here. So this is showing that white has made 6 moves and black has made 0, even though they've made the same number of moves. So a tempo is simply a move. For those of you who take music, you might know a little bit about tempo and how it relates to music. It's very similar in chess. It's just simply a beat or a movement of a piece. But not all movements are the same. We could just as easily start making bad moves for black or for white and just back up all the pieces. And we could see that this would not be very good. So tempo is a relative thing, but it has to simply put a move, and it's very important that you know that. So tempo is a move. Now, let's go back to here. We're going to move on to the point of the lesson. Do not bring your queen out early. Here is why. So let's start off with a regular game here. Both players have put their pawns in the center, and both players have made one move. All right, so white's going to go ahead and capture the pawn. Now, everyone should know that if somebody takes one of your pieces, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to take back. That's the normal thing you do. Very, very early principle you should learn. So it looks like from this position, both players have made two moves, but it looks like black has a piece in the middle and white has nothing. And we know we want to attack the center. And the queen is in the middle right now, and she can see all sorts of different directions from the middle. And doesn't she look awesome there? So she looks like black's winning. It looks like somehow white lost a move. But that's the rub of it. The queen is the most powerful piece. And she can't stay in the center because she's afraid of every other piece except a queen, because you can't trade fair with her because she's worth so many. I'll show you what I mean. White makes this move right here. Knight to c3, attacking the queen. So the queen can't stay there. We can't protect her because the knight would take her and get 9 points. Even if we could take back, we would only get 3. And so now we have to move the queen out of the way. And the best move is just to put it back where it starts. But now we see that white has a piece in the board, black has nothing, and it's white's move again. So white actually gained a move. Now white has 2 pieces out, and black is only going to be bringing out 1. So what happened here is that we lost a tempo. A tempo, an important one. We had to retreat the queen. We couldn't leave her out there. Now I know some of you out there are saying, well, the best move in chess is check. So I'm going to check the king, and this is a checkmate, and I win. I'm sure somebody out there, I mean, clearly the queen can see the king. But this is not a checkmate, let me assure you. The king can't move anywhere, that's true. But we know that there are 3 ways to get out of check. We can run away, but there's nowhere to run. So we either have to capture the queen, which we cannot do, or block by putting a piece in between. And in this case, we're just going to block. Now the queen can no longer see the king. Okay, so let's bring out another piece. This is, we know we're going to attack the center. We bring out another piece, but here comes white. They bring out another piece, and once again, attack the queen, meaning that the queen cannot stay there because the queen is afraid of everything except other queens. And so the queen has to move yet again. And now we see from this position that white has 3 pieces out, the bishop and both knights, and black only has 2, one of them being the queen. And this is not the best position for black. Black is wasting time moving their queen over and over again. And then white could go ahead and castle and have an extra move in. I mean, who knows? There's any number of moves. But either way, the queen, when it moves early, gets attacked by weaker pieces and then either gets lost because you don't see it or has to run away, losing the tempo. And we don't want to give our opponent any more moves than they already have. Look at all of black's pieces on the back row there. Okay? All right, Mr. Moderator, are we doing okay? All right, we're going to move on to the next chapter here. This is another short example of just how silly it is to bring out your queen too early. So we're going to just put our pawns in the middle. And let's say white brings out the queen right now. Queen to f3. Well, black could do the same thing. And now, this isn't a great move, but the point of it is the queens are looking at each other. And so if the queen takes, we take back with the knight. And look here, black has 2 pieces in the center and white only has 1. So it really is like white lost the move and black is moving first. How did that happen? Well, it happened because of this queen move. We moved the queen twice because the queen's in danger and they don't want to lose it. So they captured, and when we capture back, we bring a piece off the back row. And this is just a simple example of how moving your queen too often and early gets you behind moves. One move probably won't end the game for you, but you don't want to give your opponent free moves. Okay, so Mr. Moderator, I'm going to pause at this point, and do we have any comments or questions coming up on what we've gone over so far?
All right, this is a good point. We can answer a few questions now. If anyone has a question that they'd like to ask, you can use the raise hand button at the bottom right, and I will do my best to call on players. I'll call your name and then unmute you. We may not have time for all the questions, but if you have any other questions that don't get answered now, you'll be able to answer at the end of the lesson instead. All right, so let me start. Akshaj.
Why don't you do the same thing that black did for white instead?
Having a little trouble with that. Why did you do the same thing with black? It was, from this position where we played queen to here? Is that your question?
Yeah.
Well, this really isn't a good move. As a matter of fact, much better would be to just bring the knight out here. I only did this as an example to show that if you capture or move, you're going to waste the tempo. Remember, white moves first. So in this position, both sides made an equal number of moves. But if white captures and black captures back, it looks like black got to move first. Do you see how black has a piece in play and white has none, even though white went first? So I was just using it as an example. It's not necessarily the best move.
Okay.
All right. Colt.
Okay, if you're playing on white and you move your bishop to f5 and your opponent has a knight on c6, if you capture with the bishop.
Okay, I have a bishop on f5 and a knight on c6. What are you looking to capture?
Oh, not f5.
b5?
b5, yeah, b5. Yeah, if you take the knight on c6, would that be considered bad? Because then
Tempo?
after.
That is a tempo question, so I will cover it. The thing is, in this previous position, when black plays a6, they're attacking the bishop. So moving the bishop again is a requirement. You have to move it, because if you don't, it's going to be captured. So capturing the knight here would not be considered bad. What would be considered bad, if black were to make a different move, just move their pawn forward, and now you capture, you're kind of putting two tempos into the bishop and getting rid of it. So it's not the worst move you could make, but it's not a necessary move.
Okay.
So you would not want to waste your tempos by moving the same piece twice. It would be no different than from like an early example of a brave knight. So if doing this, bringing your knight forward, this is a waste of tempo. And I think we covered a little bit about moving the same piece twice. Well, now the knight's up here. You've moved it twice. It's just going to be attacked, and now it's going to have to run away again. And so now black got the free move of a6, and they're going to get to move again and bring out another piece. This is another excellent example of giving away tempo, giving away free moves. So this is really one of the big ideas with bringing the queen out early, is that it allows you to waste time, and that's something you don't want to do. You want to bring your weaker pieces out first. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Let's see if we can focus more on queen issues. If anyone has any other questions, we'll probably have time for about 3 more questions, and we'll have to move on to the rest of the lesson. So let's see. We've got Dorsley or Gilbert.
Why couldn't you, like, when you had the bishop in front of the white king, why can you not just move the queen where the white bishop was? Where the white bishop was in front of the king.
Is this the position you mean?
No, when the bishop was in front of the king.
Okay, bishop is now in front of the king. What is your next question?
Why can you not just move the queen where the bishop was?
Ah,
Take.
you can, absolutely. So you would get 3 points for taking and check the king. But what is white going to do next?
Capture your queen?
They are. They're going to use either the king, the queen, or either knight. We'll use the knight. We haven't moved yet. So now you have lost the queen that you've moved several times, and you have no pieces out. All of your pieces are on the back row, whereas white has 2 pieces out, and you're down a queen. So that is why you would not capture necessarily when the bishop blocks, because the piece is protected. Remember, it's one of the things, you're moving your most powerful piece early. It can't attack weaker pieces because it's afraid of them, because a weaker piece is going to take it back, and you'll only get 3 points or 1 point or something, and they'll get 9.
That makes sense.
Very good.
Okay. Then, all right. That's it. If you have any other questions, send them to me in chat, or you can wait until after the lesson. It will probably be about 8 more minutes. So, Miami, if you think you're ready, we can finish up the last part.
Very good, Mr. Simons. Thank you. All right, so we're going to move on to, hey, my opponent just brought out the queen early, and I am scared. This is often a precursor to the 4-move checkmate, though it does not have to be. In this position, both sides have gone to the middle with their pawns, but now white is going to do exactly what I'm telling you not to do. Boom. The queen comes into play, attacking 3 different things. This is a very scary looking move for those of you who haven't seen it, because the queen's out early. What do I do? What do I do? Well, it's not as bad as you think, because the king protects this pawn and the rook protects this pawn. You just have to look at what it's attacking. The thing that is important is this pawn right here, the pawn on e5, because the queen can take it, then it would check the king, and you would lose a pawn. So we don't want to lose a pawn. So if we really look at it, it's not as scary as you think. It's just attacking 1 pawn because everything else is protected. So all we have to do, follow our principles. We bring our knight to the middle, and that knight guards the pawn. And so now, if the queen were to take it, you would lose the queen, right? So now you just have a queen sitting over here on the side of the board. It's attacking things, but it can't really win anything. So white's now going to bring out their bishop, and this is the move that really gets people. The bishop and the queen are both attacking on f7, and the f7 is only guarded by the king. So from this position, we have to worry a little. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to get us, but we do have to defend. If we see the attack, we can stop it. The best move, g6. We move our pawn forward. Now the queen can't see this anymore. And our pawn attacks the queen. In this position, the queen has to retreat, because otherwise the queen gets taken. The queen doesn't have anywhere good to go, really. Probably the most common move you see is retreat the queen to f3. From this position, the queen and bishop can once again see f7. If we don't pay attention to this, we could get into big trouble, because if d6, and then you have the old checkmate with the bishop protecting it. So we don't want that to happen. So instead, we're going to make a good common sense move. We're just going to develop our knight to the middle. Can our queen here just take the knight? No, it's guarded. The queen protects it. So you would get 3 for white, and then black would capture back and get 9. So that would be very bad. So from this position, we can't really take the knight. The knight is also attacking this pawn. So this is doing good things. Black is moving their pieces to the middle. But white is not ready to give up. No, no, no. They're going to make more queen moves. Queen to b3. It's a sneaky move. They're trying one more time to attack f7 with both the queen and bishop together as a battery. This is easily defendable. We just move our queen up one square and it protects it. And now you see that the white pieces are actually in a bit of trouble here. The queen is moved 1, 2, 3 times in the first 5 moves. The knight is attacking this pawn. The black knight is looking at coming into very good squares to attack the white pieces. So white is actually in a bit of trouble here, trying to figure out where to go. They're going to have to make some move, and none of them are really good. So whatever move, let's say they want to guard this pawn, and say move the pawn up, we can now bring our knight into d4, attacking the queen and this pawn. The queen has to stay on it, because if it moves, say a silly move, the knight can come here attacking all of the good pieces at once. It's very bad. So whatever move white decides upon here, they're behind several moves because of moving that queen so many times. Black has managed to put their pieces to the center and make good attacks. Black's queen only moved once. It's protecting things. It's protecting a pawn. It can come out if it needs to. This is a much better way to move your queen, somewhere where it's not going to be attacked. I do have a cute little thing if for anyone who's paying attention from this position. It is not a requirement to actually guard this pawn. You could actually play this sneaky move and attack the queen. It's a trick because you give up the pawn, but, and see the knight's attacking the queen, so we're going to move our queen to c4 to try to protect it, but then b5 attacking the queen. The queen has to retreat, and now you lose the bishop. So that's just a little trick there, but the queen e7 move, probably just the safer, simpler way. White still has all the problems of losing the tempos that they had at the beginning of the game. That's the only cute little trick I wanted to show. It wasn't a requirement to bring the queen up here, but it's still a good move. I think that's all I'm going to add on how to block the queen. All you have to do, look for the threats, look for what they're attacking, and make good defense. And the queen just kind of looks silly moving around the board as much as it did.
Okay, are you ready for more questions then?
Yes, I'll be glad to take any questions about this position or any similar ones here.
All right, I'll start with that, although I will make one more point, which is I just note when the queen's out, it's usually attacking somebody. So always make sure you defend yourself from it first before you start attacking it like we were showing here. The defense happens first, then you can start attacking. All right, let's see. First question is from Matthew K.
For one of the examples before this one, instead of moving the knight to capture the queen, you can just use the pawn. It would be a better move because more pieces can come out, like the bishop.
Oftentimes you're correct. I didn't see a position where a pawn could have attempted to capture the queen, but correct, if there was a position, you could.
Well, I saw one. I saw a pawn that could.
Miami, I'm pretty sure it's
Is this the position?
The queen with the knight? Or okay.
Is this the position where the pawn is attacking the queen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What you would be correct. That's why we play this pawn move. There's other ways to guard from this attack. For instance, we could move our own queen out. It's not a very good move. We don't want to move our. But moving this pawn forward, like we did, is a good move. But what white is going to do is they're not going to let us take. White is going to run away. So white retreats. This is the idea. They run away so the pawn
Okay.
can't. You see, if they would have let us, so certainly we would have taken the queen. But white
Okay.
does get to run.
Okay.
Well, that looks like all of the questions that we had. So if you have any other questions, you can email them to us. We're going to be posting a video too. If you missed a part of the lesson, you'll be able to see it there. And we've got videos for the other lessons as well if you missed any of those. But I hope you guys had a lot of fun and learned something new. And if you have anything else you want to let us know, feel free to do so. And I didn't have anyone tell me any really cool stories, although I did have someone talk about how they were able to checkmate in 5 moves because their opponent's queen came out too early. But otherwise, if you have any other stories to let me know, you can send them in chat. But hope we all had a good time, and we'll hope to see some of you guys here on Tuesday for our next lesson. Goodbye, everybody.